Hello everyone, welcome to iExamB. Yesterday PFRDA exam phase 2 took place, and in this video I will briefly analyze the exam and the questions that came in the PFRDA exam. More importantly, this video is very important for all those candidates who are going to appear for SEBI 2003 or you are eligible to be giving to SEBI 2003 and if you are not aware of this opportunity. So PFRDA and SEBI exam are exactly the same. They have the same kind of exam pattern and phases and the syllabus in which the exam takes place. So if you have prepared for PFRDA, SEBI is the exam you should now look forward to. The notification for SEBI is expected in December 2022. Yes, in the current month, the expectation of the notification is there, and the exam is expected for the phase 1 to happen in the last week of January, right? So this exam analysis will be very important to have your own strategy in place to start preparing for SEBI 2023. So let's look at the phase 2 paper 1, which is descriptive English paper for PFRDA that came in this phase 2 2022. Of course, there were two questions. So first one was related to the essay. Here the essay had to be written in 200 words. There were 4 options, topics that were given to you, and an essay had to be written on one of them. The first topic was related to education and the sustainable development. Second was inclusive culture at workplace. The third related to the importance of microfinancing in Indian society. And last was about history maketh the man. Right, so these were the topics, essay topics that came in the PFRDA exam. The RC, or the reading comprehension, was very simple as per the students. It was very direct questions were asked, and the comprehension was based on education and philosophy, and there were the views of Aristotle, Socrates and Plato were mentioned here. The Prezi was also easy, and it was based on the topic of employment scenario in India before and after the pandemic and the attrition rates that have been there. So there was a Prezi related to this topic. So moving on to paper 2, which consists of 7 subjects in case of PFRDA, consisting of accounts, costing, management, Companies Act, economics, finance and the pension sector. The paper was very well distributed. However, there was more focus on the Companies Act and the pension sector. The paper was easy to moderate. Some of you may disagree with me saying that no, the paper was not easy, but actually the paper was quite direct. And yes, they had covered a lot of questions which were, from the Companies Act, which were from the pension sector, and very expected questions. And some of the questions, in fact, some students have mentioned, were actually repeated from last year's paper and some even from phase 1. So that's why I will say the paper was easy. The students who had strategically prepared, had actually looked at the previous year papers of SEBI and of PFRDA, have found it easy and direct to do. The questions were syllabus based, and there were certain questions from the circulars related to RBI, PFRDA and SEBI also. The other questions were conceptual, like the numericals had required 2 levels of calculation, but they were usually simple, but they did require your understanding of the topic so that you could do that 2 layers of calculation. And there were not too many numericals, only 5-6 numericals that had come, 2 or 3 from the costing segment and 1 or 2 from the accounts segment, and there was one related to forex under the finance topic. So these were the numericals, not a very numerical heavy kind of a paper. So let's broadly look at the kind of questions that came. If I talk about accounts, there were few numericals. One was related to ratio, but this ratio was not profitability ratios and all. You had to actually calculate the EPS. EPS is the earning per share, right? So there was information related to the opening share that the company had, the closing and the new shares that they had raised during the year. So based on that, you had to calculate the EPS of the company. There was one question related to rights issues. We are still looking for the exact details of this question. So if you are aware, please write in the comments box what the exact question was related to the rights issue. There was a question on IND AS 17 and IND AS 16. IND AS 17 relates to leases and Ind AS 16 relates to PPE, right, which is fixed assets related, right. So another very important point to mention here, we have been guiding students, and in our course we have included accounting standards from the point of view Ind AS, and if there are any changes, very drastic changes from the earlier accounting standards, we have also highlighted those and mentioned those, and we discussed those in our course. Unlike many times where students get misguided and think that we need to keep following the accounting standards, but Ind AS has been now in operation for a long time. It has been implemented across various kinds of companies except for the banks now, right? So they are important and one should be aware about the Ind AS, right? So there were questions related to, very direct questions, what exactly it is mentioned here. There were questions related to the matching principle and revenue recognition, also under accounts. Under costing, the weightage of the questions under costing was relatively low. Only 4 or 5 questions were there. Direct questions, simple questions related to budgetary control, EOQ, TPM was mentioned, and then there was a numerical related to variable cost calculation. If I talk about finance, the questions here were good questions, I will say, less conceptual but more factual questions related to what is going on in the finance sector. Like NBFC, as per our discussion, NBFC was an important change that is happening in the current financial system in our country. So there was a question related to NBFCs related to the there has been scale-based supervision introduced in NBFCs by RBI. So they had to identify the layer in which a particular NBFC was falling. So that was the question. Then there was a very simple conceptual question that if the book value is more than the market price of a security, then what would it be? In that case, the answer is undervalued, the security is undervalued. The full form of ISIN was asked. The debt maturing in a year is identified as what? It is known as the current liability or the current maturity of debt. There was a question related to a circular issued by RBI related to the reporting norms, that disclosure and reporting norms, that in case there is a deviation in the gross NPA calculated and reported by the company and as per the RBI calculation, right? So when this has to be reported and disclosed, the correct answer was 5% or above deviation. Another question related to beneficial owner in shares is considered who has at least 10% of holding. Then RBI, when is lending against collaterals, it falls under the LAF window, liquidity adjustment facility. And there was a numerical on forex related forward rate contract, right? So if there is a forward rate contract, details were given and the price was given at which the forex is this, and therefore you had to calculate the payoff in that case, right? So some conceptual questions, I will say, like this is a monetary policy conceptual question. This is a conceptual question per se. In the topic, if you read about shares in detail, the beneficial owner and the shareholders definition was given by SEBI some time back. This is again a conceptual question, a conceptual question, a conceptual question. So unlike the belief that everybody has that there were a lot of difficult questions or old news or circulars related questions, that is incorrect way to analyze this. One should be aware about any big changes that the regulators bring in the financial system, right? So this will be something important that we can keep in mind for our preparation for the SEBI exam also. Talking about economics, again, very, very easy direct questions were there. There was a question related to inflation definition. There was a question related to stagflation definition also. Then there was a question on LM curve, that if it shifts right, what is it, when does it shift right? It is because of the increase in the money supply. A question on the 15th Finance Commission was asked, what is the weight of the income distance? So there are certain parameters that are used, and one of them is the income distance, and that has the highest weight as per the 15th Finance Commission of 45%. Again, all this information has been covered in our course. I will talk about the coverage a little more in detail after talking about the questions that have come. Then another conceptual questions related to NNP and what was the correct formula to calculate NNP. The correct answer was GNP minus depreciation. There was one question on Coulomb curve where the competitors price is constant, which is given by the Coulomb curve. This question actually was also there in SEBI exam this year, or I think in 2022, right? So that's why I'm saying it's very, very important how we prepare strategically, right? Looking at the past trends, analyzing similar exams is very, very helpful to have our own strategy in place. And then there was a question related to the income consumption curve of inferior goods, what is the shape of that curve. Management questions were not difficult this time. Many students sometimes find the options very, very confusing. This time the majority of the students have found very easy, direct and understandable. No case study based questions came, and direct questions. There were questions related to leadership and motivation theory. There was a simple question on laissez-faire leadership. What is it also known as? It is also known as the delegative leadership. Morale, there were differences between morale and motivation that were given, and the correct statement was that morale is a group concept as against motivation, which is an individual concept. There was a question related to linkage building role. Again, similar question has been asked in the past in one of the exams of SEBI before. And then there was a question of if there is mutual trust and confidence amongst the team members, what does it lead to? It actually leads to job satisfaction, right? So management this time was very, very easy. There were many questions this time from the Companies Act. There were questions from the auditor, who can sign. There was also a cooling off period from the auditor, that is the term of the auditor was also asked. There were questions related to dividend, 2 questions from dividend, one related to once the dividend is declared, then within what time it has to be deposited in the bank account. It is 5 days. And there was another question on the limit of the dividend. It should not be higher than the 3 years average of the past years. Then there was questions related from the application money. What should it be? Minimum. The minimum application money in case of issue of shares should be at least 5% of the nominal price. Nominal price is also your face value. Then this question, some students are confused, was in finance or in general stream, related to underwriting commissions that can be paid on shares. There's another question related to appointment of directors. The intimation has to be given to the registrar within how many days? The correct answer is 30 days. There was a question related to the types of capital. There are 2, equity and preference. Then there was another question on NFRA, under which section does it fall of Companies Act? Section 132. Again, this question is a little doubtful whether it was in general or in the finance stream. And then there was one question related to NCLT president, who can be. So a high court judge who has remained for 5 years, a high court judge can become the president of the NCLT. So again, very, very direct questions. From the expected topics, auditors, as I say, is the most important topic that you should always cover. Dividend is another important topic, and directors is another very, very important chapter to be covered. Talking about the pension sector, here the focus had more been on other pension schemes, and there was less focus on NPS this time. In phase 1, they had completely focused on NPS and the Atal Pension Yojana. This time they focused on all the other various schemes. So there was a question related to gratuity. When does a person become eligible? So it is after 5 years of service. In case of EPS, which falls under the EPFO and is a part of the EPF contribution, the wage limit is 15,000. The children are liable to, or can get pension under family pension up to 2 children at a time. Till what age? It is actually up to the age of 25 years or till they are married, whichever is earlier. Right? Under Vay Vandana Yojana, there were 2 questions. One related to the loan, which is allowed up to what extent, the 75% of the purchase price. And there was another question on Vay Vandana, which was, what can be the maximum contribution here? Then that is 15 lakh. There was one question related to Jeevan Praman, and there was another question on the APY, Atal Pension Yojana scheme, as to how many times can a subscriber update the pension amount. This is once in a year they can do that. right? So these were broadly the questions. We are in the process of making the memory based questions for you. You will be able to get that very soon. We will discuss in detail and also tell about the coverage. Broadly, the coverage from all the questions that have I shown here are questions. We have covered all these questions in our course, all the ones that I am showing here. All these are present in our course for both PFRDA and for SEBI. So the coverage is definitely 90% plus. We are, as I said, in the process of collating, and you will be able to see very, very soon the memory based paper. What about now? Expected cutoff, right? So you will be interested in the cutoff. So this is the response, from the students about their attempts in paper 2, the number of questions they have attempted. So you can see students have, majority of them have attempted more than 35 questions. Based on the responses about their accuracy and the number of questions that have been attempted, my estimation is that the expected cutoff for paper 2 will be in the range of 30 plus minus 2 marks. This will be for your paper 2. For your paper 1, the expected range will be around 42 marks plus minus 2. This is your descriptive English. And your total cutoff, okay, where paper 1 has a 1/3 weightage, paper 2 has a 2/3 weightage, right? So based on that, the expected cutoff for this, I'm talking about the general unreserved category, is expected to be around 57 plus minus 2 marks. So this is the total cutoff I am expecting for the phase 2 here. Of course, this can be shot up also based on, but depending on this, still whether you will be called for the interview stage or not will depend on the higher marks, because the vacancies are much less as compared to the number of students. So there are 5,000 students and we appeared for 15 seats. So based on that aspect, only the top 200 to 250 students will be called for the interview stage. So this is the expected part, but what you should be doing now, that is much more important. As I said in the beginning, the SEBI exam is approaching. The notification should be out anytime soon in the month of December, and the exam is expected to be in the last week of January. Based on that, we have already started a 50-day study plan from the 1st of December, and you will be very happy to know, very pleasantly surprised, that we started this batch on 1st of December, but the class schedule that we have kept in mind is matching and is on the same pattern as what we have seen in the PFRDA exam. We are holding a lot of sessions on numericals, different kinds of numericals, direct and indirect, to help you understand the concepts and also be able to use and apply them. We have separate classes on SEBI circulars and important updates in the finance sector, so that you again are able to not just know about the concepts but also are aware about all the things that are happening in the financial sector. So our classes are actually very much in line and have been on this pattern from before the exam of PFRDA, which shows the kind of understanding we have over the years for guiding you for these particular exams. If you have any doubts or queries related to the preparation, we are holding a workshop on SEBI Grade A 2023 preparation along with Sushil Ragde sir on the 6th of December at 8 p.m. So you can register for this. You will find the link in the description box. You can ask your queries about the preparation and any other thing related to SEBI Grade A exam. So thanks everybody. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. All the best.